Yes, first of all, a very, very warm welcome to Stockholm community. It's not that warm today. Yesterday, it was very warm outside. So let's see. Stockholm is like that, unpredictable in terms of weather. But thank you so much for being here. And you can all say hi to our community.
Hi.
Hi.
Brilliant. You're doing awesome work in your startups, and I was wondering if we could start by an introduction of what you're doing. So I'll put the first question, and we can probably go in the sequence that maybe it goes from Dora to Isabella and to Mikaela. So if you can give a short introduction about yourself, about your startup, and how you're making impact. Yeah.
Cool. Of course. Much first of all for having me here. I'm excited to be part of this trio. My name is Dora and I'm from Hungary, but I moved to Sweden to study at KTH. I have a background in neuroscience and computer science, and I studied human-computer interaction. So my background was in science and technology, and I have personally experienced sort of the lack of women in tech, worked as a developer, and have seen the number of female developers is, and of course I've also experienced on the receiver and the impact of not having a lot of diversity among the creators of technologies, just like thinking of things like Apple Health, not even thinking about female health in their basic products and whatnot. And all these experiences had led to me wanting to make a change in the industry and bringing in more diversity among the creators. And in particular, where I sought out to make a big difference was in younger women's life. We see that a lot of girls drop their interest and confidence for science and technology between the ages of 11, 12, and up to 16. And that's why imagiLabs, my company, has set out to create a product and community to not just inspire, but also sort of equip and empower girls with all the skills they would need to create with technology. I think that's the quick intro from me.
Excellent. Very inspiring, talking about that you're enabling females at an early stage to go into a sector which is traditionally recognized as a male sector. So it's a great initiative. Isabella, we move to you.
Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Isabella Palingirian, co-founder and CEO of Mimbly. I have a background in bioengineering, and then I studied entrepreneurship and business design, and that's where I founded Mimbly back in 2017. And we have created a solution that we call the Mimbox, which is an add-on water recycling device for professional laundry machines. So we save water, we save energy, and we filter out microplastics when you do laundry. And we are in common laundry rooms or with cleaning companies that do a lot of laundry. So that's very short about what we do. We're based in Gothenburg, so not Stockholm.
Great. Huge impact on environment, I think. Are you a hardware or a software or a hybrid?
Both. So we have a hardware product that is connected. So we have a platform where you can log in and see all your savings. We can also see all the products that are out to prevent maintenance and so on as well.
Okay. Before we move to Mikaela, same question to you, Dora, because are you a software only or a software and hardware or a hardware? How are you in imagiLabs?
Yes, exactly. So it's just like with Isabella. Maybe that's why we have so much always to share. But we have a hardware product which I always have with me. This is the imagiCharm, our programmable accessory. Some call it like a code your own Tamagotchi. So we do have a software component where you actually learn to code, but then we have this physical extension that makes coding even more fun.
Okay. Very interesting. Mikaela, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Nice to be here with such amazing women as well. I can see that we all three are from a background in science. Okay. I hold a bachelor degree in design and product development as well from KTH as Dora, and a master's degree in innovation management, and with a focus on circular economy. So that's where my interest for circular business models and environmental questions grew a lot. There I developed a framework called the Lean Circular Framework during my master's, which contains tools and methods for startups to create circular business models and sustainable companies from the beginning. And I don't know if you remember, Dora, but I actually interviewed you for that master thesis. So it's nice to see you again. And we've used that framework to develop the operations and the model for Hacker Closet, which is the company I'm running together with my co-founder, Lisa Gauthier.
Okay.
So we have a vision to change the clothing industry and the way we consume clothes, and because the industry is looking pretty bad when it comes to the environment. So we offer an alternative to buy new clothes instead of buying new clothes and even owning clothes. So you can update your closet and continue to experiment with your style by borrowing clothes and share a huge closet with other thousands of closet hackers. So that's what we do.
Okay, so you have a digital platform, and then that's connected to your inventory in some way, and then that
Yes.
inventory gets passed along, and then that's recycled back also. So it kind of works
Exactly.
in the circular model that you're talking about. Very interesting. We go deeper into your startups but before that, one question: how was this Forbes experience being there, listed there? How has that changed things? Was it a surprise? Was it like a push for, like, oh, I'm on that list, now I have to do this? Like, what's the feeling like being there?
An honor.
I think
Yeah, please go ahead. Anybody can just go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is definitely like a stamp of sort of recognition, but of course, I'm pretty sure it's the same for the others, that this is not like what you're working for. I mean, I think I get really happy and excited and fulfilled when I see girls telling us how much they enjoy coding with our product.
Okay.
But recognition like this is still important for the business, because it does give sort of like a stamp that helps you with, especially with partnerships and potentially investments and whatnot. So, of course, very honored and appreciative of it, but it's not the end goal or not the goal of running a business.
Thank you. Very good and a real response. Okay. Would you like to add something, Mikaela or Isabella, on that?
I agree with Dora. It's a huge honor to be on the list, of course, and it gives a lot of visibility and great contacts and opportunities like this one as well. So that's great. But yeah, let's not lose focus on what we're actually trying to build.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with you both. Extremely fun to be featured. And as you say, it's good for like international media and for investors and for the whole company to be seen. And it brings a lot of extra value as part of like other media or events that you can attend. So that's really, really great.
Great. So message for our community: awards and recognitions are a great way for your startup brands, the way it is building in terms of partnerships and all, but it should not be your deviation away from your core why in the startup. Great. So let's go a little bit into your startups, and let's try to understand for our audience, like, how far you have come with your startup. Like, when did you start? What stage you think is your startup? Are you at a so of course you are in the market, but what investment round, if you are investment based right now? So if we can go a little bit on how far we have come and where we stand. So maybe we can take the same route. Maybe Dora starts and then Isabella and then Mikaela. Maybe it keeps things simpler, goes faster.
Sure. Yeah, thank you. So we started imagiLabs in 2018 with sort of like an idea, and I must say we did not incorporate a company until we had our first customer who wanted to pay, and we had to have a company to be able to make an invoice. But that being said, back then it was like 3D printed prototype of our product that we actually sold. But I think I do say this often, that for us it was important that from the beginning we've had like customers. It's been a mix of financing through soft funding, through customers, through investment soon in. And then in 2019 we had a Kickstarter campaign, which is what allowed us to actually produce, like manufacture our first batch of products. And then we got to the market actually a year ago. So we've been like live on the market for about a year. With our hardware product, the imagiCharm. And at the same time, we launched our app, that being said, we still consider ourselves like early stage. We had a pre-seed and angel round this January. And the reason for that is sort of for our longer term vision. We are putting a lot of work into still developing our curriculum, our software component, which is sort of like part of our long term vision, both in terms of the health of the business and the financial sustainability, but also for the impact that we really want to create. So we're still sort of like in a phase where we are adding a lot to our product and our offering, while I think it's important that we've been on the market and we've had people actually paying for our product from the start, so we really see if this is valuable for people or not.
Okay, very interesting journey, and that you're still classifying yourself as relatively early stage. One question over there, how deep did you go into the startup ecosystem to build this startup? I hear that you have been to Sting. What kind of, did you get any ecosystem based programs or support around the startup, or like how deep was that in building process?
Yeah, we started at KTH sort of, so we also worked with a coach from KTH Innovation, and then we were part of Sting. I think as a young and first time founder, these networks have been extremely important, especially I'm not even from Sweden, and I think it's been extremely pleasant, so to say, how open the ecosystem was, and you can be anyone, but with an idea and with a passion. If you become part of these networks and you reach out to people, you get so much help, and you're able to find angel investors from the local network. So from my perspective, again, as a foreign first time founder who just came out of school, these networks were really important.
Okay, great point on network. Isabella, how has your experience been in building your startup, and where do you see in terms of stage you are at? What's it in your mind?
Yeah, so I started Mimbly as my master thesis. So 2016 to 2017, it was kind of like a project where we didn't incorporate, and we tried to figure out what type of product we wanted, which type of customers we were gonna go after, and so on. We really wanted to work with water, because water is a resource that's getting more and more scarce, and we're gonna have a lot of problems with water in the coming years. And even in Sweden, we have a lot of water, we still see issues when we have warm summers and so on. So since then, we have taken in funding. We started as Dora as well, with soft funding and soft loans to be able to create like the first prototypes. We 3D printed a lot. We have a lab in our basement where we build and make fast prototypes, which you have to. We have a very technical and kind of heavy product. So it was very expensive for us to get consultancy or to get help to produce it. But we did take in an investment round last year of 8.5 million Swedish, and then we got a big EU grant and a big Swedish grant. So we got in total 30 million, I think, last year, SEK, which has then kind of led us to finding a production partner. So now we're producing in Sweden. We're launching our systems now. We are doing like the last type of pilots with customers before we actually commercialize, which is really, really exciting. And,
but you are pre-commercial stage.
Yes, we're doing paid pilots now. So I would still say we haven't launched fully.
Got it. And how has your relationship been with the ecosystem or support system? Has that come into play in building your startup process?
Yeah, I would say the same as Dora. As a first-time founder that didn't really know anyone, we started off in Chalmers Ventures incubator.
Chalmers, okay.
Yes, but then we were part of a lot of different accelerators and incubators, and that's how I met Dora, through the EIC. Okay. So we met at a competition. Was it Climate Kick back in 2018? And I think it's really great, mostly to find other founders and other entrepreneurs where you can bounce ideas off and like help each other and through your own networks. I think it's amazing.
Okay, but Dora, if I come back to you, you have been in market for around a year now. Okay, commercially, and you are pre-commercial. You are piloting with the grants that you have and the investment. We move to Mikaela. Yeah, let's talk about your startup.
Yes, so I would say we closed our seed round. We started a company in 2019, and I started with Lisa, which is not a first-time founder, which was lucky for me because she had a lot of contacts already, and we also kept the similar investor relationships with our company now. So we were a bit ahead there. And when we launched in summer 2019, we didn't have a product that we needed to build or produce. So we basically needed just to go to secondhand stores and buy clothes, style customers, and send boxes. So it was not a heavy operational, that needed to be put in place first. So we could start getting money already from the start, paid customers. And then we did a first seed round 2020 in the beginning before the pandemic of 4.5 million SEK. And then we did a second one now in January of 20 million SEK. And in terms of ecosystem, we've also been in the climate kick, but in 2020. And then also a Plus Impact Accelerator by Danske Bank here in Stockholm that has helped us a lot.
Very interesting. But you mentioned something very interesting there, that you didn't go very heavy at the start stage. You built some customer relationships. So at the launch, you didn't have a fully finished platform. Is that what you're saying? Okay.
Yeah, we had a website.
Okay.
And then we did one Instagram ad. We got in 30 customers. We did the pilot. We went there, bought clothes, styled them, sent the first boxes with a little feedback note inside the box. And then 1 month later, we got the boxes back. Okay. We read all the feedback notes and saw that, okay, this is something that we can scale. And from there, still sending boxes every month, we kept on adding features, and now we have an app and an internal software that we use and so on. But it was really startup phase, build, measure, learn, and going through those loops.
But that's very interesting, and that's a message to the community who are on right now, and when this show goes on in our archives, that you can really start with a very basic product and really focus outside and get all the outside knowledge, outside relations, and outside possibly sales possibilities into your idea, because then you can rapidly see how fast you can grow it in a particular direction, because at a very early stage you are not very clear where this can go. So great learning there, that you started really, really raw and built it, started building it with the outside relations.
Yeah, you can build it together with your customers in the end.
Very good point. Let's go back a little bit again on the startups, and we can think about, given your context around in the market. Dora, we start with you. How do you think your startup is positioned? What kind of competition exists? Do you have kind of an easy market or a very difficult market with a lot of competitive pressure? And how are you different from what's out there in the market?
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's a matter of how you sort of position yourself or imagine that you should be positioned. And I think, so from our perspective, we are trying to get girls more excited about technology and coding specifically. And so really the only solutions that are focusing on our target age group in that sense with coding are sort of nonprofit initiatives or events that teach code, bring girls together for a one-day event. And so the way how we really have been standing out there is that we actually have a product and a digital solution and a digital community, which could have a longer lasting impact and could also just scale a lot further than simply running events. Then there are, of course, I mean, if you think of education market and coding education, that's an extremely rapidly growing segment, coding becoming mandatory in schools in many countries, including Sweden. So in that sense, there is quite a bit of competition. And here, we get a bit technical in how we are different. And this is where I think a bit of a difference for example, Mikaela, is that like our product, it comes with a lot of research and development. It's not just like you can just put it out there, but the way how we differentiate ourselves is like very technical in the sense that we do teach a real coding language, Python, as opposed to a lot of solutions on the market that just teach drag and drop coding. We do have sort of like differentiation in our pedagogy and like how effective the learning is. So these are all things that like do require a long time to sort of like develop and validate. So we have sort of, yeah, I would say competitive edge in actually like the methodology that we use to teach and the learning outcomes that we deliver. Yeah, so that was sort of like a long-tailed answer to answer both about the market. But I think with education, it's both a good market because it will always be there. It's a very like sort of like stable market, and it's growing, and we can see that there's a lot of interest. But of course, it is also a tough market. There is competition, and there is sort of a lot of trust that people need before sort of making decisions, especially when you talk, you know, to parents about decisions that they make for their children. So yeah, it's not like a quick market.
No, but very interesting point, because you started with talking about that more than events, it's more about community, and then you have a hardware product there which kind of sets you apart, and then you went into the teaching and methodology. If we go one step more into this, what's the end benefit that comes out to the user level? Is it that after going through this community or being associated with your startup, is that they become knowledgeable? Is that the key gain? Is it this that they get some startup projects to work on? What have you seen or experienced in the last 1 year since you've been in the market?
Yeah, I think also like another tricky sort of aspect of our solution is that our end users and our paying customers are different.
Okay.
And so there's a lot of companies out on the market. It's not like nothing new, but it's just something to be aware of.
Mm-hmm.
So the value that we deliver to the educators and to the parents is you know, the children actually getting the skills, but then the end users, the benefit that they get. So this is why our tagline is sort of like giving the skills and the confidence to create with technology, because that's the benefit that we see is like confidence has to be grounded in knowledge. So we do give that knowledge, but also essentially the confidence and the sense of belonging that one can code and wants to code.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Coming to you, Isabella, what do you think? Because you are not at a prototyping, but more at a piloting stage right now. And what has been your experience in respect to how you see the competition around you? Is your product like, what would you be competing against with your solution?
So we're working with professional laundry machines, which is a pretty conservative industry. There's not that many players. They're usually pretty big as well, and old companies. So we're not really competing with them since we are an add-on product. We work with any brand. But of course, if they come up with new machines, they're more efficient. You might not buy both the Mimbox and new machines. You could if you want to, but you might not do it. So for us, it's more other types of solutions for the real estate owners that want to be more sustainable. So if their incentive is to save water, they might install other type of water saving products. But we don't have a direct competitor in the market right now. Okay. So we want to move fast, and that's why we want to kind of launch the product really soon. Okay. And especially with kind of the software and the hardware, we're also differentiating a bit so that they could also share their savings. And the same as Dora, we have different customers and users. So we sell the product to the real estate owners, but it's normal people like us doing the laundry, and that is actually kind of interacting with the Mimbox and the product. Okay. So you also have a different customer and user. Good. That's a good point. We'll come back to that. Mikaela, how about you in terms of how does your competition look like, and where are you different from other offerings in the market?
We're also operating in a quite conservative industry. I would say the clothing industry, it hasn't changed for many decades. Now we have seen more pop-ups with companies that are doing rental fashion and a lot of secondhand and so on. And so we see them as indirect competitors because we are still using rental with only clothes taken out of the waste stream. So it's secondhand, it's overstock, samples, unsold goods from brands that haven't been worn even once. So that's how we differentiate ourselves from other rental fashion companies. And one other thing is that we offer personal styling. So it's us picking the clothes. It's not you picking what you want to rent. We are more a subscription service. So you get your box curated just for you in your style and size every month. To your door, and then you use the clothes for a month, you return them, we wash them here. We would really need the Mimbly box for our washing, and then they go back in the closet and out to the customers again. So it's more of a lifestyle change that you need to do, and a change in consumption behavior, really.
Style, and then you mentioned a very interesting point, which was your core differentiator is your personal styling, which touches on the personalization space for the consumer. How is the market structured for all three of you? Like, who is any of you outside Sweden as well, or is it primarily Sweden that you are focusing on? We can take that point. Anybody can jump in. Yeah.
We're focusing on Sweden right now.
Okay.
And we're operating in both Sweden and France.
Okay, 2 markets.
And for us, our biggest market is the US, but we have sold in 22 countries when it comes to our hardware and our software. I mean, the app is available globally, so it's been downloaded in 79 countries, I think.
Okay.
So yeah, it's fairly global.
Okay, very good. So maybe then it's we can go 1 point deeper on this, Dora and Mikaela. And we start with you, Mikaela. You said you're in Sweden and France. Any key differences you see in these 2 countries when it comes to sustainability, acceptance of your product, or the core idea of circular and all? Yeah.
I would say that we focus a lot on sustainability and a more sustainable lifestyle in Sweden, but I would actually say that they are more ahead in terms of circular economy in France. I think both because it's more economical to have those kind of services. They have circular business models in different industries, such as the car industry, sharing car rides. Also a huge competitor for us in the clothing subscription models as well. In France, here in Sweden, it seems more like people are adopting it a bit slower. We are still in the high consumption mindset here in Sweden, but it's for sure coming. But that's, I think, the biggest differentiator.
Okay, so the core difference. Okay, if we maybe it's I'll just put the question there. Maybe there is not a clear answer to this. Do you think it's due to there being better startup or innovation activity between the 2 countries, or the consumer adoption of these things? What could
I would say it's the consumer adoption that has been a bit faster in France. They also started with circular economy faster there. And also they have some laws and regulations which are stricter to companies in France than what they have here in Sweden, which also pushes, of course, the market.
Okay, so regulatory framework is a good enabler for consumer action, because that then defines some basics where you need to. Good point.
That's the same for us, actually, in France. Okay. They have regulations for microplastics, which is not the case here in Sweden.
Great point. So I think more work on regulatory frameworks is required in Sweden to drive the consumer movement side of it. Very good point. Coming to you and imagiLabs, again, any difference between Sweden and other markets, or more in your case, has language been a factor in your platform in some way?
I mean, that is the most important. I mean, so our content and everything is in English, and while most children do speak and understand English in the Nordics, it's still somewhat a barrier. But from sort of like a strategic perspective, it just makes sense to keep things in English until it becomes like a burning pain. Now we are actually like, we have localized some of our content for workshops in Sweden. But yeah, definitely like language is the barrier when it comes to markets in our case.
Okay, very interesting point. And I'm also, when I arrived in Sweden 6 years ago and was buying appliances like a washing machine or the vacuum cleaner or the TV, you would always get an appliance with all languages except English. So there'll be, so I was very surprised. So it doesn't happen that way because I come from Pakistan and a little bit in Middle East. So English is always there. So okay, good that we came up to that point. And I think it's a good learning for startups who are building up in Sweden. When I'm coaching them in my coaching sessions as well, there's a major point if you're building a platform or a learning platform or whatever, consider localization. And would that, if you are not local enough, would that act as a barrier for your startup? So that's just for our community. But
so just an interesting point here. I think like what I've heard a lot before, I mean, of course, if you have a physical component, like with Mikaela, that you also have to do it locally, it makes sense to also focus on a local market. But a theory that a lot of people have, why a lot of Swedish startups have been able to be very successful internationally, is that from the beginning you have most things in English, you have a very global mindset because the Swedish market is quite small. Yeah. So actually, it can also be a benefit that you are building it from the start for like a bigger market, essentially.
Okay. Excellent point. So global from day one, as they say in sometimes when you're developing mobile from day one. So it kind of positions you in one particular way. Let's talk about a little bit on the brand side. So all three of you are entrepreneurs, and then you have a startup brand that you're making. How deeply is your own brand linked to the startup? And that's a question for some of our community. When you're building a startup, how important is to build your own brand? And are there some tips in that side? Like when you're a startup founder, how do you go about it? Yeah. As opposed to your startup brand. Yeah, so you have imagiLabs, but then you are Dora, then you are Mimbly, and then you are Isabella, and then you are Hack Your Closet, and then you are Mikaela. How do you balance that? Yeah.
I definitely think it's quite hard to separate the two. I mean, especially when you're starting out and sort of like your startup life consumes most of your life. And I think also perhaps, especially as impact entrepreneurs, I believe we really like live and breathe our mission. So I would say in my case, they're quite closely related. And also in my experience, the first sales you make, the first partnerships you have, the first investments you receive, it's not like you cannot separate yourself out of the picture. Oftentimes people will believe in you, your commitment to the cause. So that is extremely important. And then in our case at imagiLabs, we also like targeting sort of like younger people and Gen Z. And there we even feel that it's like having like a personal brand is like so important. Like people don't want to connect, especially younger people don't want to connect with companies. They want to understand like who are the humans behind. So I think there is that part, and it seems like it's becoming more and more of a trend for all generations as well. So I would say, yeah, it's hard to separate.
Yeah, I would agree. You can't really separate, especially in the beginning, because then you're kind of most selling like vision and this is what we're going to do. And I think it's good to have both. So like on LinkedIn, I have more followers, I think, than what Mimbly does, but I share mostly Mimbly things and things related to the company. So it's not that I am working on my own personal brand by myself. So they are very linked, and you should use that in the best way, I think. It's like attending events. Now it's not that many events because of the pandemic, but mostly otherwise. And like media, they usually write about the founders maybe, but then kind of turning it more towards the product as much as you can.
Yeah, I would agree. I sometimes say, hey, I'm Hack Your Closet. No, but it is hard to separate. But I think also both me and my co-founder have focused a little bit on what are we as individual good at. And I have been focusing a little bit more towards circular economy and the sustainability part of the business and trying to be the expert in that. So whenever we get requests on students wanting to do a master thesis or interviews and so on, we choose who is the best founder to take this call based on the theme. So we have separated it like that.
Excellent. Very good insights. We'll go one step deeper again over here. And thinking about your own professional or the personal brand that you're building, what's your favorite network or channel, or like, is it LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, where you think you get into your own zone, kind of, as a founder? Yeah, I feel free. It doesn't matter. It's just a question. Maybe it's good for our audience out there.
I think for me it's LinkedIn. No, sorry. I think for me it's LinkedIn for the networking and for company purpose and my own branding as well. I'm quite shy on Instagram. Then I rather go behind the hacker closet Instagram.
Okay. What are your experiences? Isabella, maybe you can share, and then Dora.
Yeah, sure. So I would say LinkedIn as well. For like the professional network. My Instagram and Facebook is mostly just like personal and friends, or like other female founders that we hang out a lot. But otherwise it is, I would say LinkedIn.
Yeah, I was just going to say the same. Not my favorite platform, but it is definitely the most effective and has the best reach in my experience. But I'm also on the other platforms. But yeah, I think for networking, it works really well.
Okay. Let's move a little bit to the impact side of discussion now. And of course, all your startups are impact focused. Maybe Dora, your startup focuses more on the social innovation side because it's affecting lives of people. Yours are more towards the sustainability side of impact. But of course, since there's a lifestyle component involved in both of your startups in terms of the reimagining the laundry and the water management, and in your case reimagining your closet, I think that's again a habit change, that's again a lifestyle or a change. How do you, and maybe these questions have come from your investors as well, how do you measure impact, or what is the key impact metric that you have started measuring or will start measuring going forward? Like, how do you know that you are on the right track? As we started in our discussion with Forbes, and you said you still need to focus on the why of your startup, and these awards are good for recognition. So what's your why level impact tracker? Like, how do you know you're on track as a startup? Maybe we go this time with Isabella first, and then Mikaela, and then Dora. We break the circle a little bit.
No, but yes, so we measure a lot with our product, but what we show and what we actually look at when we measure is water saved, so liters saved. Okay. Our product is, I can explain maybe more, it's a bit difficult to understand, like it's attached to two machines at the same time to maximize the savings. So all the water goes through the mem box, and all the water gets filtered for microplastics. And then we reuse the water again if it's clean enough. So we recycle up to 70% of the water. We save energy by keeping the heat in the system, so you don't have to heat up the water as much for your next laundry batch. And then we filter the microplastics. So we measure the liters that are being saved. We measure how much energy we're saving, and then in combination, how much CO2 we're saving, and then how many microplastics we're saving. So one wash can release around 700,000 microplastics if it's like a mixed wash. And we try to capture as much as possible out of those.
And you have already started tracking this in your test phases and pilots?
Yes. Okay. Yeah, so the pilots that are out now, they've been out for a couple of months. They've saved almost 50,000 liters of water right now. Okay. So that's really fun.
Well, good. Really good to know. Mikaela?
Yes, so we are lucky that we have investors that are keeping close eyes on us, like they're tracking us every quarter, and we need to report our impacts numbers every quarter. But right now we focus on saving as much clothes as possible from being burnt or being landfill. So we measure like the amount of clothing items that we have in the closet. Of course, when it comes to changing consumption behavior, which will be the biggest impact. We measure how many customers we have changed the consumption habits of, and then it takes about 3 to 5 boxes. Then they stay with us for forever. So that's what we measure. And then, of course, that leads to them not buying any new clothes, which also we can calculate the CO2, the water savings, the chemical savings, and all of that as well. But besides that, we also measure the impact that we have on brands that collaborate with us, that circulate their overstock and activate their unsold goods with us. We help them, and they help us also close the loop of the industry. So that can be measured as well.
Yes, when you asked the question, I just wanted to mention, I think, this is extremely important. When we started out with imagiLabs, we're part of a competition called European Social Innovation Competition, and I worked with another program called the Cartier Women's Initiative, and in both of these programs, I got like really strict training on sort of like impact measurement frameworks, which I think are extremely useful. Like frameworks are very useful in these contexts. Worked with something called the theory of change, and then there is also something called the impact measurement framework. And so I think this is important, especially if you have sort of like this longer term perspective impact measurements. For us, sort of the North Star metric in the short run is just the number of girls creating with code in the app, which we can measure quite easily. But then also have sort of like longer term like aspirations, like the number of girls who will be entering higher education, right? But in technology or starting to work in the field, but that is like very, very long term. So you also have to find sort of like middle grounds what you can measure. And sometimes it's more qualitative. So for example, we worked together with 2 students from Stockholm University who wrote their entire thesis project, interviewing and assessing the impact of our product on some of our first users. So I think, sort of like having both the short term and the long term perspective on it, and using these frameworks is what's keeping us in check.
And so I think, just summarizing for our audience, one is that even as we learned from Isabella, even when you are at a pilot stage, you could still start measuring your impact. That's a great practice. Sometimes, as Mikaela was saying, your investors can be very much hands-on on the impact side. So that can actually help your startup. And as Dora was saying, theory of change, or having some frameworks already in place when you're creating your startup. And you mentioned the example of thesis, like getting other people in and they can help you out. So all those are great ways. If I may ask, because all of you have raised some funding, okay? And if we were to take some sort of a indicator kind of a situation here, and the question, let me see how I can put it. When you have been raising the money, how strong has been the push from the money lenders or money investors to measure impact? Has that been a huge pressure on the startup, or has it been, what do you think, the other side? So, okay, one way of asking this is, how much is the other side asking for impact measurement when they are funding you, or when they were funding you? How strong was that drive, or was it kind of okay?
I could start. So our investors, we send, as Mikaela said as well, updates with our measurements and how far we've gotten. I would say some of our investors are more sustainably focused. All of them have a sustainability focus, but not as strict, maybe. And then we received a really big EU grant of 19 million crowns, and they, of course, have really strict frameworks of how you should measure and report.
Got it. Anything to add, Dora or Mikaela?
I mean, I just wanted to say, sorry.
Go.
That it's also sort of up to you as the founder who you want to take financing from. And of course, if you are an impact founder and it's important for you, then perhaps like it's strategic, or it makes sense to partner up with the right partners who will care about that. So yeah, I mean, of course, you find investors on the spectrum from like philanthropy to not caring about the impact, and then somewhere in the middle is the sort of like impact investors. And so I think it's also up to you to choose who you partner with.
Very good. I think we can take some questions which are propping up. So I'll ask Beryl, I'm bringing you in. You can probably raise a few questions to the panel and we can try to respond. So you're coming in. That's where I tell audience it's going to take 10 seconds of unknown space on how things will work. Let's see.
Hello.
Hi, Beryl. Thank you for joining in. Yes.
First of all, thank you so much for joining and for a very interesting conversation. We have a few questions in the chat. The first one is from Marina. It's a two-part question. When was the moment in your life when you decided that you could build your ideas? And when you started, were you full in, or did you decide to give it a try and see what happens? Please feel free to jump in and take the question.
I would say for me, like I always say, it wasn't like full on like jump in, and I think it makes sense that it's not that way. I like to say that I always been really busy and doing a million things, and when I started to notice that this project idea was making it so easy for me to say no to other things, because I just kept coming back to it. I wanted to work more on it and work more on it, and I didn't have this FOMO of missing out on other things. I just wanted to do this. That's when it became clear that it was something really important for me. So I think it was like a gradual process, and then when I gradually convinced my co-founders to join in. So it wasn't like an overnight decision in my case. Yeah.
I would say pretty similar to me as well. We did it as like a project for a year. And then when we incorporated, then it was full on. So we started off like building a little test MVP and trying out, seeing if there's any customers. And then when we found some interest, then we went for it.
For me, it was quite different, as it was my co-founder, Lisa, who had the idea from the beginning. And my background was that I really wanted to work in a startup, in a smaller company. And so I reached out there. I had a startup, an idea that I was working on before, Hacker Closet. And then that didn't work out. So then I reached out to Lisa, really liked her idea. And she needed someone to be able to scale it as well. So then I joined, and yeah, that's my story.
Okay, very interesting. The second question comes from Jan, and he wants to know, how do you see your company scaling, and what will be the challenges that you can foresee?
Again, I think to find the right, find and build a great team, I think it's a challenge that is not to be taken lightly. I think everyone that runs a company knows that the team is the most important thing. And to actually have the right people when growing is going to be crucial. So I think that is one of the main factors.
For us, we are in a stage where we're trying to scale now, and our vision is to become the biggest shared closet in Europe with 7 countries by 2025. So that's a pretty aggressive goal that we're going for. And as Isabella said, I think the team is really, really, really important, the most important thing. But also to figure out and be a very fast problem solver when you're scaling, because there's things that you notice and you can handle when you're building your startup and when they're still small. But then when it comes to scaling and bigger volumes and so on, and you don't have experience from working in bigger corporations, then it comes completely other challenges. So I think being fast at problem solving is key.
What about you, Dora?
Yes, I was actually thinking of something similar, and especially I think because all three of us have sort of like physical components to it, or things that are quite intensive on the cash flow as well. It's also like just a matter of thinking through like how can you keep your focus and not try to do too many things at the same time as you're scaling, and to scale like the most like the core of your business essentially.
Perfect. The other question comes from Patricia, and the question is, would you say that these 3 companies are also social companies? Have they applied to become a B corporation? What are the plans for the future?
We can start with you, Isabel, if you want to.
Yes, so we want to build a big company and a global company. I think, as we talked about before, that we have English as our main language. We have a very diverse team with many nationalities, and we have a product that could fit anywhere in the world. So kind of starting with that from the ground up is really important to build a big company. And I think social sustainability, for us, we have a clear kind of environmental sustainability, and we try to take responsibility from other industries, kind of like textile industry, detergent, white goods, and so on, and also enable the normal users to wash without feeling as guilty as they would have otherwise. But I don't really know if we're not in the same degree as maybe Dora and Mikaela on the social side.
I think an interesting concept also, we worked with an impact sort of incubator, is like this lockstep model. So I think there's a lot of like organizations sort of like compensating, but looking at how can we also create like social impact on the side. And I think what's exciting is like all three of our companies, the idea is that the bigger this company becomes, the more impact you create, sort of. So I think when that's part of your business model, or like, you know, like the core of your business is the impact is growing with you, that is a really exciting new opportunity. And so I think like there's a lot of like a few successful examples of this now. Like, for example, I don't know, like Oatly has become really big, and of course has received some criticism, but the idea of that, like the bigger you grow, the more impact you can create. So you don't like think of being a social impact on the side, but that is the core of your business. I think that's like how we think about it, and that's the key to it. Whether we should be like a B Corp or like what's the legal sort of like framework around it, I'm not sure if that's sort of like what makes it or breaks it. I think like making sure that your impact stays in the center of the business model, that is what's going to make it actually make a difference on a scale.
Yeah, I agree with all of them. And to answer the B Corporation question, to apply to these certifications, it's very costly. And as all of us are working on something that is sustainable and that is making a social impact, and from the beginning, I think that our companies have the phase out of already being quite good, so to say. So I don't know if we really need those sort of stamps as a B Corporation or other certifications as other companies might need to have that approved. But I think that our companies are pretty approved in that space already.
Okay. I think we are running out of time, and these were all the questions. So thank you so much.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Beryl, for raising these. And I'd like to thank Mikaela, Dora, and Isabella for being here today on the community and giving us a very real, how would you say, real insight into your startups and the way you have built these. I think these are amazing lessons for our community, especially when they are building social ventures. And the journey of being an early stage startup is also very real, because so many can relate to it, like your early funding challenges, soft funding, then investors coming in, then more investors coming in, and the experience of branching out into more than 70 countries to France in your case, and in your case being a pilot, maybe going out. So I think these are all very relevant and real experiences. We'd like to thank you a lot from Startup Grind Stockholm side, and have a very, very good journey ahead with your startups. And thank you for the listeners and others who will catch up on this.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
Take good care of yourselves and have an awesome weekend.
You
Bye-bye.
too.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.